If your brain's stuck in overdrive and you're tired of being told to just relax, this video is for you. Or if you feel like you have 17 different tabs open in your brain, one of them playing music and you can't figure out where it's coming from, this is also for you. It's Justin from Health Made Clear. Today we're going to go over anxiety, what it is, what it isn't, in relation to my depression video, which you can find. And again, I apologize for how bad of an editor I am. So to get right into it, we're going to go over anxiety. The DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, which is what all mental health practitioners use to define and to diagnose anxiety or any other mental health condition for that matter, DSM-5. They define anxiety as excessive fear or worry interfering with daily life. And the key part about it is the part that mentions interfering with daily life. If you're concerned about a test, you're concerned about a hard conversation you have to have, that is anxiety, but it's not so bad that it is going to affect your daily life. We are going to have anxiety in our life, and that's okay. And as long as it's not something that, interferes with your life and makes it so you can't live it, it's probably a healthy amount of anxiety because you're doing something worthwhile. So types of anxiety kind of fall into several categories. I'm going to go over the most notable ones. So GAD, G-A-D, or generalized anxiety disorder, which is the most broad one. Panic disorders, social anxiety. Other notable anxiety types are phobias, like fear of spiders, fear of this. Like an irrational fear of a spider across the street is probably a form of anxiety because it's going to affect your life. You're now not going to cross the street because of a spider, or fear of dark rooms, or you won't swim in the water because unless you see the bottom because you're afraid of the depth. There's a name for it. I can't remember what it is. There's like billions of phobias out there, so they all kind of fall under the anxiety category. Separation anxiety, which is where you can't be separate from somebody. I'm sure most people have heard of animals that have separation anxiety, like an animal that can't be locked in a kennel because it'll break its way out and it has to be around its owner. That's one that I think a lot of people are aware of. So just to go over how prevalent it is, and another one that I forgot to mention is catatonia, which is where essentially your anxiety is so bad that you quit moving. I used to work as a nurse practitioner in a jail, and we had a couple of patients who would come in with catatonia, and you could literally just move their arms and it'd stay there for hours. Like they wouldn't eat, they wouldn't drink, all that kind of stuff. And we would give them just tons and tons and tons of anti-anxiety medications. And basically the way that I kind of described it is their anxiety is so bad, it's locked up their brain and their whole body. Kind of like a seized engine. And then you give them the anxiety medication, and over time it kind of unlocks it. And then 5 to 10 days, they're talking, they're acting normal. So just to kind of go over how prevalent anxiety is, according to the WHO, global prevalence is 301 million people, so 4 or so % of the population. The US specifically, we've got about 19.1 million, or 19.1% population has it annually. And then 31.1% of people are going to have it in their lifetime. It's kind of a weird statistic. So I think what that means is 19% of the population at one time has anxiety, but 31% of people are going to have it in their lifetime. Very weird. Now, we've talked about what anxiety is. We're going to talk about what it is not. We know that anxiety is not just worrying too much about something or being weak. If you have true anxiety, we, from what we can tell, know that it's a multifactorial issue that can't just be solved by telling somebody to, bootstrap themselves up or to stop worrying or just be better. Even though it's fun to joke like that, it doesn't really make a difference to the person and kind of just stigmatizes them and makes them feel like they don't want to come talk to anybody. What do we do for anxiety? Most common things are medications, which you've all probably heard of, SSRIs, SNRIs. Cognitive behavioral therapy is pretty popular as far as clinical things that we'll do. There's always a debate about how effective those things are. And what I did is I went and I looked to see what the percentage of effectiveness is. So in anxiety disorders specifically, SSRIs and SNRIs versus placebo, those medications in generalized anxiety disorder and social anxiety disorder and panic disorder were shown to have a small to medium effect. So not very big to somewhat big, but enough to be, enough to be noticed, according to the research that I was using. And cognitive behavioral therapy in generalized anxiety disorder was shown to have a large effect. That's cool. And then in social anxiety disorder and panic disorder, it was shown to have a small to medium effect again. So some effectiveness, not a ton. Probably would be good to combine the two of them. Maybe you can turn that small to medium effect into a medium to large effect if you combine the two of them. But specifically in the generalized anxiety disorder, the cognitive behavior therapy seems to be quite effective, which is really cool. And I want to go over some of the caveats with all research on people, because people are not rats. They can drop out when they want to. We can't put them in a cage and give them exactly what we need them to have, because that would be inhumane and we have to go to jail. And people can lie. So there is that. And they're also influenced by certain things. So we know there's dropout rates in a study, and oftentimes if somebody's dropping out, it's because they're having really bad side effects. And so the study may have a swing towards being more effective because those people who are just getting a bunch of side effects may have dropped out and their results may not be counted. And if you have somebody who stays in there, it's probably because they're getting better results. And so they're more likely to stay in and finish the study. So just know that with people, there is always that inherent bias when you're doing a trial like this, because we're people, we're different, we have freedom. It's not done like a bunch of mice in a lab. I want to point out that lab studies on mice in general aren't bad because you can control every single variable, which is something you can't do with people. And I believe that lab rats share like 93% of our DNA, something like that. So it's a pretty good analog. And also a rat's life, I think a healthy lab rat lives for 2 years. And so a 6-week study is a pretty hefty portion of a rat's life, whereas a 6-week study in a person is just kind of a spit in the wind. Other things that complicate studies on this kind of stuff are what they call positive modeling. And that is essentially when somebody hears of somebody or knows of somebody who has a good outcome with something. So like maybe I take Zoloft, my friend hears that I take Zoloft, and I say that I like Zoloft. Well, just based on that, that person is more likely to have a positive effect from that medication because they heard that somebody else had a positive effect from it. So that can skew results in these studies. Then there's also the conditioning and belief biases. So if you're told a bunch, hey, this is going to work for you, just because of the placebo and the nocebo effect, it may. I kind of think that's why a lot of people get benefit from healing crystals and things like that, because they were told that it'd work for them. They want to believe that it'll work for them, and they had a friend who it worked for them, and then it works. But we cannot find any physical evidence as to why it works, but it does. And if you're having really crippling anxiety and doing some stuff with some crystals makes a difference for you, awesome. Who am I to say that, it shouldn't be working, therefore you shouldn't do it if it is working? Like, we don't really know what to the effect of the SSRIs even work. In my depression video, I talked about the missing neurotransmitter theory, and I went into a little more detail that I'm good on this one because I've already done that, but we don't have a full understanding of what anxiety and depression are fully caused by. We think we understand, but it continues to change. In fact, there is a lot of overlap with depression and anxiety, and the theory was that it was the missing neurotransmitter theory that helped with anxiety too, because we give a lot of depression medications for anxiety. Doesn't appear to be the full story in that. Theories behind anxiety, there's several. We're going to kind of go over a brief overview of each one. The most popular one, the one that's been around the longest, is the neurotransmitter imbalance. So we have neurotransmitters called serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, GABA. They all have a different effect in the body. They regulate mood, sleep, appetite. GABA is one that you use to calm. A lot of people use it to help with sleep. Deficiency in some people, according to some of the research that I've read, can lead to heightened fear and panic responses. Norepinephrine triggers the fight or flight. Too much norepinephrine can cause hyperarousal and anxiety symptoms. You can kind of think of norepinephrine as a gas pedal if you're pushing on the gas. And anxiety is just the effect of having the gas pushed because it kind of takes everything else. Then there is the HPA axis dysregulation and cortisol. So the HPA, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, that controls the body's stress response. Too much chronic stress from chronic worrying or something that's going on can cause an overproduction of cortisol, which can lead to anxiety, fatigue, immune suppression. Cortisol is bad. It also causes problems with metabolic syndrome. It can help with PCOS, or not help, bad for that. Can be an issue with PCOS, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome. Too much excess cortisol is bad, but you need some cortisol, obviously. And then there's the gut-brain axis. This seems to be a little more new, a little bit harder to really tease out what it does. The theory is that the microbes in your gut, because you have lots of bacteria in your gut, can affect how the brain works. There's the gut-brain axis, which connects the digestive system to essentially the brain system, and it can affect mental health via nerves, hormone signaling, and microbes themselves. There is some theory out there, just to kind of illustrate how it works, that if you crave something, it could be because of your microbiome. And so if you eat something that's good for you, essentially, say you hate broccoli, but you eat a bunch of broccoli, there's some research out there that's showing that if you eat a bunch of broccoli over time, that gut-brain axis will influence you to crave more broccoli because you have an abundance of bacteria in your stomach that will crave broccoli. So sounds kind of wacky, pretty new research. When they talk about destroying your gut biome, we don't really know what a healthy gut biome is, because take a bunch of healthy people, you test them, their gut biome is not the same. So there is definitely a healthy gut biome and an unhealthy gut biome, but as far as what that is comprised of, we don't really have a concrete solution to that. It seems to be individual. And then obviously there's the environmental and genetic triggers. If you had a dirtbag parent who beat the crap out of you, that could cause some anxiety, and there's nothing that you can really do about that after the fact when it's done. Those kind of things make you vulnerable to anxiety. So maybe some people's parents had a parenting style that could have caused anxiety. Maybe you lived in a household where your parents pitted you kids against each other, which could cause chronic stress and then increase cortisol, and factor that with, kind of a heavy-handed parent, and you're kind of primed for anxiety. And there's also tons of other things that could have caused anxiety that we know are environmental. And then there's this newer phenomenon, because social media is just getting to be more and more popular. There's some theories out there that show that consistent digital exposure can overstimulate the brain, and it can make parts bigger, make parts smaller. And we know that whenever you watch social media, you're always comparing yourself to somebody or something. Usually people watch social media for that dopamine hit to make them feel good. And if they don't get it, they don't feel as good because their body can't derive that dopamine hit, which is a neurotransmitter, from, daily activity. So they got to watch something on social media. I think that's why there's so many parody and joke videos that go around. And I watch them too. Obviously they're hilarious, but I think that's why they're so popular, because they're such an easy hit of dopamine. It's like a cheap dopamine fix. And then social anxiety due to social media can cause heightened anxiety, especially in younger people whose brains aren't fully formed and those who use it heavily. So we've talked about what it is and how prevalent it is and kind of things that it does, or things that we use to treat it, how effective they are and are not. Now I wanted to go over some things that you can do without a physician, without any kind of, medication or without a prescription, that you can do to treat your anxiety or to augment your anxiety. It probably won't fix it all the way if it's pretty serious, but it'll help. So exercise, just like with depression, exercise seems to be as effective as a lot of the SSRIs and those kind of things for anxiety and depression. There's the breath work and meditation. I couldn't get one to load on the video, but there's those GIFs that you can watch where you have a box that opens up into a hexagon and a 12-sided thing that kind of comes like this and then goes in, and you just match your breathing with it. That can help. Just general therapy, maybe not CBT, but general therapy to talk about it could be helpful. Changing your diet, eating healthier, going back to that gut-brain axis theory that we talked about earlier. Along with the depression, there's the sunlight and the circadian rhythm, because we know that if you're sleep deprived or not feeling very good or sick, that it's going to affect your mental health. It's just the way that it is, and there's just no way around it. If you don't sleep well and you feel like ass all the time, you're gonna have some problems. And then finally, along with that, to kind of fix the sleep, is some good sleep hygiene. I have a video on sleep hygiene to recap, winding down an hour or two before you go to bed, getting a consistent bedtime, getting a consistent bed routine, Don't try to overstimulate yourself before you go to bed. I know that if I play a bunch of video games and I get emotionally psychotic when I play video games, that I'm not going to sleep well. So I put away video games before I go to bed. Some games I can play, like if I'm playing like a basic game of like backgammon or chess, whatever, I can play that and go to sleep. But if I'm playing like something intense on a console, I'm going to have a bad night if I don't stop like an hour or two before. One thing that is really obnoxious about anxiety and all mental health issues is the societal stigma about it. I kind of glossed over this before, but just because you have anxiety doesn't mean that you worry too much or seem to be better. It gets dismissed and it gets mocked. We've seen people come into the hospital who are convinced they are having heart attacks. Like they are convinced. But it's a 20-year-old girl. The odds of a 20-year-old healthy girl having a heart attack are quite low because they're full of estrogen. Estrogen's pretty cardioprotective. Not saying it doesn't happen, but very low. So she comes in, losing her mind, talked to her a little bit, and she's upset about, didn't get a positive pregnancy test. She's been trying to get pregnant for a while with her husband, and then it goes away. But they come in absolutely convinced that they are having a heart attack. And anxiety can kind of mimic whatever you think you're having. So if you get a twinge of chest pain because your heart's going fast because you're anxious and you think you're having a heart attack, then you start kind of willing it into your body like, oh no, now I'm having jaw pain and left-sided arm pain, and you're just having an anxiety attack. As a nurse, I've seen people come in with what they thought was a heart attack, raging stomach aches. I've seen them come in with, almost anything I have seen them come with, and there's a chance it could be anxiety. Not always, because there are always misdiagnosed people who have a real issue that we miss. One thing about the ER is we're not very good at finding things that aren't life-threatening. We're good at finding the things that are life-threatening. I've seen people come to the jail when I was a nurse practitioner there with catatonia, and people who are coming off of alcohol or drugs, they have increased anxiety, so they think they're having chest pain because they've been using alcohol as their coping mechanism, which is essentially their drug. So it's a real issue. It caused a lot of problems. Just me thinking out loud, I do wonder how much of people's drinking problems has to do with depression and anxiety because their only coping mechanism. And it seems to be, depending on the circle that you run in, better to just be somebody who drinks a lot than somebody who's on depression or anxiety meds or has to go to therapy, which is kind of a joke. Especially the therapy part, because there's almost no evidence that alcohol, well, not even almost, there is no evidence that alcohol is better for you than going and talk to a therapist. Even if you don't think therapy works, just on its face, therapy is better for you than alcohol. Alcohol is bad for your body. There's almost no use case in alcohol, even the wine studies, that it's better to have it than not. It's not there. There's really no use case to have alcohol for health. It just doesn't exist. So to recap really quick, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorders, social anxiety, most common form of anxieties, phobias are a form of anxiety. CBT seems to work the best, and the medications seem to work okay. Exercise, sleeping better, sleep hygiene, healthy diet, just kind of things that you need to do for yourself seem to make a big difference as well. 19% or so of the population has it at one time. Roughly a third of people in the US will get it at some point. Pretty prevalent in the world. Roughly 4% or so of the world population has anxiety. We don't really know what causes it. As far as pinpointing one thing, it seems to be a mixture of a lot of things. We talked about the HPA axis. We talked about the neurotransmitter imbalance, the gut-brain axis, genetic, environmental, trigger, social media, multifaceted thing that we think cause anxiety. If you have, some examples of what helped you with anxiety, I'd love to hear them. Other people would love to read them. If you want to give me some ideas for another mental health condition that you'd like to see me do a video on, happy to do it. Love to go into it. I'm kind of running out of ideas here. And if you like this, you found it helpful, like, comment, subscribe, comment, tell me how dumb I am. All that's cool. I appreciate the love. Bye.